Georgia, 1842. In the sweltering illness of August, the rosewood plantation lay bathed in sunlight and sin, a place where manners masked cruelty and whispers carried more truth than sermons. The white-columned house stood proud on a hill overlooking the cotton fields, its beauty as deceptive as the perfume of a corpse flower. Inside that house lived Eleanor Whitford, the widowed matriarch of Rosewood, graceful, commanding, and feared by everyone who crossed her path. Once celebrated for her charm and intelligence, Eleanor had grown into a woman of contradictions, part steel, part sorrow. She kept her wealth, her pride, and her secrets guarded like fine china. Her daughter, Clara, was 17, curious, sharp-tongued, and too much like her mother for comfort. She had inherited Eleanor's dark hair and temper, but not her caution. Where Eleanor calculated, Clara dreamed. Where her mother ruled by silence, Clara demanded truth. And between them stood Samuel, the enslaved man whose presence would unmake them both. He was known among the slaves as the carver for his skill in woodwork, for the way his hands could turn broken timber into art. To the Whitfords, he was simply the boy from the workshop. But to the women of Rosewood, Samuel was something else entirely. A quiet, steady figure whose eyes carried a weight that drew attention and fear in equal measure. What began as glances turned to words. What began as sympathy became something unholy. By the time the first frost came that year, Samuel had become entangled in the lives of both mother and daughter, and by spring, one of them would vanish. The Rosewood scandal would be whispered about for generations, but the truth was darker than gossip dared to imagine. Because love, when born in bondage, is never just love. It is defiance, it is danger, and sometimes it is death. Eleanor Whitford's roses bloomed brightest in the heat. She often said they thrived on pain the way roots took better hold in hard soil. Every morning before breakfast, she walked the garden paths with her silver shears, pruning the buds herself while the rest of the house still slept. From her porch, she could see the fields beyond the trees, the white cotton like ghosts rising from the earth. The sight used to comfort her, a reminder of her late husband's empire. But now, at 41, it only filled her with weariness. The plantation was her cage as much as it was anyone's. The first time she noticed Samuel, he was fixing a gate near the stables. His back was bare, slick with sweat, his body corded with strength. He didn't notice her watching, or perhaps he pretended not to. Something about his stillness unsettled her. That night, she dreamed of her husband cold, cruel, and silent, as he had been in life. She awoke in a sweat, feeling an ache she hadn't allowed herself in years. When she looked out her window, she saw Samuel walking back toward the quarters under the moonlight. She told herself it was only curiosity, but curiosity soon became an excuse. Over the next weeks, she found reasons to summon him to mend a broken stair, to repair the parlor's shutters, to fix the latch in her garden gate. Each time, she lingered longer than necessary, asking him questions she had no right to ask. "Where did you learn to carve?" "My father, ma'am." "Your father was a craftsman?" "Yes, ma'am. Before." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Eleanor was not a woman accustomed to silence, but around Samuel, she found herself lost in it. He spoke little, yet everything he said seemed to hang in the air. One afternoon, she caught her reflection in the mirror as he worked the faint color in her cheeks, the quickness of her breath, and hated herself for it. But she didn't stop. Then came Clara. Her daughter had returned early from finishing school in Savannah, bringing with her laughter, mischief, and a curiosity that reminded Eleanor too much of her younger self. The house came alive again with her presence, yet with her return came danger. Samuel's work brought him often near the veranda where Clara liked to sit and read. She was the first to greet him, the first to ask his name, the first to smile in a way that made Eleanor's blood run cold. That evening, Eleanor warned her sharply, "You'll not speak to the help as though they are your equals." Clara had raised her brow. "He's not the help, mother. He's a man." Eleanor's hand had trembled as she set down her wine glass. "And a slave, Clara. Never forget that." But as she said it, her throat burned. Because she was the one who already had. The house soon became heavy with unspoken things. At dinner, Eleanor caught Clara glancing toward the workshop window where Samuel's lantern glowed faintly. In the mornings, she found excuses to send him elsewhere, then felt her chest tighten when she did not see him. Jealousy and guilt warred within her like twin serpents. One night, when a storm rolled over the plantation, Eleanor found herself in the garden, soaked and trembling. She didn't remember walking there, only that the gate was open, and Samuel was standing by the old oak, staring into the rain. He looked up when she spoke his name, her voice barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you, ma'am," he said quietly. Something broke inside her, then all the rules, all the fear. She reached for him. What passed between them under that tree would never be spoken aloud. But the next morning, Eleanor's roses bloomed blood red, richer than they ever had before. From that day, she carried a secret. But secrets in Rosewood had a way of finding light. And her daughter, curious, restless Clara, had already begun to suspect that her mother's late-night walks were not as innocent as they seemed. By the time autumn came again, the garden would bear witness to another meeting not between mother and lover, but between daughter and temptation. And from that encounter, tragedy would begin to take root. The air that summer hung thick and golden, heavy with the scent of magnolias. Each day felt suspended, as if the world itself held its breath around Rosewood. Clara Whitford, barely 17, found herself restless in that stillness. The plantation was beautiful, but its beauty was suffocating all sunlight and silence, with nowhere to hide from one's own thoughts. She took to wandering the estate with her sketchbook, pretending to draw flowers or trees. But her true subject was someone else. Samuel. She had first noticed him from her bedroom window, hammering a beam near the west veranda. He worked with the quiet focus of someone who knew he was always being watched. His movements were measured, his head slightly bowed, but there was a grace in the way his hands moved, not submission, but control. She found herself waiting for those moments, timing her afternoons to his work. When she finally spoke to him again, it was under the shade of the willow trees by the creek. "You're Samuel, aren't you?" she said, voice light, trying to sound older than she felt. He hesitated before answering, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yes, Miss Clara." She smiled. "You don't have to miss me every time you speak. I'm not my mother." He didn't return the smile. "No, ma'am, but you're her daughter." There was something in the way he said it respectful, but edged with warning. Clara tilted her head. "Do you fear her that much?" He looked away toward the fields. "She's not a woman to cross." Her curiosity flared. "And yet, I think she trusts you. She's sent you for everything lately. The parlor, the garden, even her own room." For a moment, his hands froze. Then he said softly, "I do what I'm told." Clara pretended not to notice the flicker in his eyes, that shadow of pain or guilt or both. But inside, her heart quickened. Something in his silence drew her closer than any confession could have. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She thought of her mother's warnings, of Samuel's voice in the rain, of the strange tension that had settled over the house since her return. It was as if invisible strings bound the three of them together, tightening with each passing day. The next morning, she went down to the workshop under the pretense of needing a picture frame repaired. The scent of cedar filled the air. Samuel was there, shirt loose, sleeves rolled up, his hands tracing a half-carved figure, a bird in flight. "You carved that?" she asked. He nodded. "Started it months ago. Never finished." "It's beautiful," she murmured, running her fingers along the wing. He turned sharply. "Don't. You'll get a splinter." Clara smiled. "You care?" He met her gaze for the first time. Really met it, and for a heartbeat, the distance between them vanished. But then he stepped back, the spell broken. "You should go, Miss Clara. Your mother." "My mother is resting," she interrupted. "And you can say her name if you wish. You know it well enough." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're saying, don't I?" The words lingered between them, dangerous and alive. Then Clara laughed, soft and breathless, and left the workshop before he could reply. That evening, at dinner, Eleanor noticed the color in her daughter's cheeks. "You've been out again," she said. "Where this time?" "The workshop," Clara answered simply. Eleanor's hand stilled mid-motion. For what reason? I wanted to see his carvings. Her mother's fork struck the plate with a metallic sound. You will not spend time alone with him. Do you understand? Clara set her jaw. Why not? Because it is improper, Eleanor said sharply. Because he is a slave. But you treat him differently, Clara said quietly. You trust him, Mother. More than the overseer. More than anyone. Eleanor's eyes darkened. Enough, Clara. The girl rose from her chair, fire flashing in her. You can lie to yourself, but don't lie to me. Eleanor's hand trembled, but she said nothing. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too tight. When Clara left the table, the widow pressed her hands to her face, fighting the tears she refused to let fall. Clara did not stay away. The more her mother forbade it, the more determined she became. She sought Samuel in hidden moments at dawn, when he fetched water from the well, or at dusk, when the shadows grew long. She asked him questions no one else dared. What would you do if you were free? He looked up from the bucket, the question catching him off guard. I don't think about that. You must. He shook his head. Freedom's just a word when you got nowhere to go. She frowned. Then you'd stay here? Forever? Samuel's eyes lingered on her face, on the pale curve of her neck, the defiance in her gaze. Forever's a long time, Miss Clara. Weeks passed like that, quiet exchanges, stolen glances. The housekeeper began to whisper. Servants traded knowing looks. Eleanor's temper grew brittle. She dismissed workers for the smallest mistakes. One afternoon, when Clara found the courage to visit the workshop again, Samuel wasn't there. Instead, she found something carved into the edge of his workbench, a small wooden locket, unfinished, with a rose engraved on one side, her mother's favorite flower. The sight struck her like a blow. She held the carving in her palm, heart pounding. The truth she had suspected, feared, took shape before her eyes. That night, she confronted her mother. Eleanor stood by the mirror, brushing her hair. When Clara entered, she met her reflection instead of her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Clara's voice shook. About him. Eleanor froze. What are you talking about? Samuel. The brush fell from her hand. You will not speak that name. Clara stepped forward. You loved him. Eleanor turned then, her face pale as marble. Whatever happened between us is finished. It means nothing. Clara's voice broke. You say that, but it's not true. I see it every time you look at him. Enough, Eleanor shouted, the sound raw. But Clara only whispered, You had him first. The silence that followed was unbearable. Eleanor sank into a chair, trembling. You don't understand the danger, Clara. That kind of love destroys everything it touches. Oh, Clara's eyes glistened. Maybe it already has. And with that, she fled out into the dark, toward the edge of the fields where Samuel's lantern still burned. The mother watched from the window, heart pounding with dread. She wanted to call out, to stop her. But her voice failed her. For the second time in her life, Eleanor Whitford stood by and let the night claim what she loved. And this time, the swamp beyond Rosewood would not give it back. The night air lay heavy over Rosewood, thick with the smell of damp earth and the tang of river reeds. Clara moved silently through the long shadows of the magnolia grove, her skirts brushing the dew-soaked grass. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, casting a silver sheen over the landscape. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a lonely sentinel in the darkness. She held the small wooden locket in her palm, the rose carved into it warm against her skin. It was Samuel's work, left for her as a sign, a token of something neither her mother nor the world could understand. Her heart thumped as she neared the clearing where they had agreed to meet, a place far from the prying eyes of servants, overseers, and, most importantly, her mother. Samuel was already there, crouched beside the shallow stream, his hands resting on the dirt as if he were waiting for her, for this moment. The lantern he carried gave off a soft, golden light that flickered across his face, revealing the hardened lines of a life spent in labor, but also a glimmer of something softer. Hope, perhaps, or longing. Clara, he whispered as she approached, voice barely more than the rustle of leaves. She knelt beside him, careful not to disturb the fragile quiet. You came, she said, breathless. I told you I would, he replied, his dark eyes searching hers. But this is dangerous. I don't care, she said firmly. I can't stay away. He shook his head, the lantern swaying. You don't understand the risks. Your mother. I do, Clara interrupted, the words sharp as a blade. And I don't care. I'll take whatever comes. Samuel's gaze dropped to the locket in her hand. You have it? She held it out. You made this? He nodded slowly. I started it for her. For your mother. But it seemed right to give it to you instead. Clara's fingers traced the carved rose. It's beautiful. You care for both of us, don't you? He looked away, conflicted. It's complicated. Your mother, she's my mistress. But you're different. She leaned closer, feeling the warmth of him despite the cool night. Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to be with you, without her knowing. Samuel's hands trembled slightly as he reached for hers. There's no way without danger. None. But we can try. We must try. For a long moment, they simply held hands, silent in the moonlight, hearts beating in unison. The world outside, the grove, the fields, the manor. The housekeeper's sharp eyes seemed to fade, leaving only them, bound by desire, fear, and the unspoken weight of secrets. But secrets have a way of unraveling. From the edge of the clearing, a rustle made them both freeze. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Samuel stiffened, his body tense. Another step, deliberate and heavy, and the faint glow of a lantern pierced the shadows. Clara? Her mother's voice, trembling with a mix of fury and something darker, possessiveness. Eleanor's figure emerged, the moonlight catching her pale, sharp features. Clara Whitford, she said, her tone low, dangerous. What do you think you're doing? Clara's hand tightened around Samuel's. Mother. Eleanor stepped closer, the lantern illuminating the hard gleam in her eyes. You've gone too far this time. Do you have any idea what you've done? Samuel rose, stepping slightly in front of Clara, though the stance was hesitant, protective. Ma'am, Eleanor's voice was icy. Do not speak to me. She turned her gaze to her daughter, sharp and unforgiving. You have disobeyed me. You have defied every rule, every expectation I have set for you. And for what? A trinket? A secret meeting in the dark? Clara met her mother's glare without flinching. For him, she said simply, voice firm. For Samuel. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and her hand clenched the lantern so tightly that the light wavered. You will leave him. You will leave this nonsense behind. Or, you'll do what? Clara challenged. Sell him again? Threaten him? You don't own my heart, Mother. A tense silence hung between them, the night pressing down like a living thing. Samuel's hand trembled as he reached for the locket, but Eleanor's gaze fell on it immediately. Recognition flashed in her eyes, and the color drained from her face. You, she whispered, voice tight. You gave her that? After everything? Samuel stepped back, unsure, but Clara held the locket up. He gave me this, she said, her tone defiant. Not for you, Mother. For me. The fury in Eleanor's eyes ignited like wildfire. You insolent girl! You dare defy me in my own home? Clara's chest rose and fell rapidly. I dare, because I will not be afraid of love. Not anymore. Not of him, and not of you. Eleanor's lips curled into a dangerous, sharp smile. So be it, she said softly, almost to herself. If it must be, then the plantation will know the consequences of disobedience. She turned and left the clearing, her lantern bobbing against the darkness, leaving Clara and Samuel trembling in the moonlight. They watched her retreat, understanding, without words, that the night had changed everything. The risk had grown immeasurably, and the line between love and danger had blurred. Clara pressed the locket to her chest. What now? She asked. Samuel took a deep breath, his shoulders heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Now, we survive. Together. Somehow. The swamp beyond the plantation whispered in the wind, a reminder that every secret has a price, and every love carries its own peril. And far away, in the dark halls of Rosewood, Eleanor Whitford began plotting a way to reclaim what she believed was hers by any means necessary. The morning sun cut through the dense Georgia fog, illuminating the sprawling estate of Rosewood like a gilded cage. Its white columns gleamed against the gray sky, but inside, the walls held a tension that no sunlight could erase. Clara moved through the grand hallways, her steps quiet, careful not to attract attention. Her mind replayed the confrontation in the grove over and over, the memory of her mother's cold glare refusing to fade. In the servants' quarters, Samuel waited, leaning against the rough wooden beams. His arms were crossed, but the tension in his body betrayed his worry. When Clara appeared, he straightened immediately. "You look weary," he said quietly. "Did she follow you back?" Clara shook her head. "No, but I know she's watching. I can feel it. Every glance, every whispered word in the house, it's like she's trying to hunt me." Samuel's jaw tightened. "We need to be careful. Any misstep, any suspicion, and she'll sell you," Clara finished for him. Her voice was bitter, but beneath it lay a tremor of fear. "I know. I'm not blind." They moved to the old laundry shed, a place hidden behind high hedges and forgotten by the daily bustle of the estate. Here, they could speak freely, plan cautiously. Clara pulled the locket from beneath her dress and handed it to Samuel. "I can't stop thinking about it," she admitted. "This locket, it's more than a gift. It's a reminder of what we're risking." Samuel traced the carved rose with his finger, his expression somber. "Every night we meet, every secret touch, it puts us both in danger. I've spent my life avoiding punishment, surviving in silence, and now I've brought you into it." Clara grabbed his hand. "No, you brought me into hope, and that's worth every risk." They shared a fleeting moment of quiet, holding on to each other as if sheer will could shield them from Eleanor's wrath. But the sound of footsteps on the gravel path reminded them that danger lurked even here. Samuel stiffened, and Clara pressed against the wall. It was Rachel, one of the older servants, her face pale and anxious. "Miss Clara," she whispered urgently. "Your mother, she's asking for you." Now, Clara's stomach churned. "Tell her I'm unwell," she said. Rachel shook her head. "She won't believe it. She says you disobeyed her last night. She's furious." Samuel clenched his fists. "Go, I'll stay. If she asks questions, I'll say you were in the garden." Clara hesitated, her eyes locked with his. "Promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," he said, voice low but firm. As Clara walked toward the mansion, each step felt heavier than the last. The grand doors opened before her, and Eleanor stood waiting, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes blazing with unspoken fury. "Clara," Eleanor said, voice controlled, "we need to talk." Clara entered the parlor, her pulse quickening. Eleanor closed the door behind her and gestured to a chair. "Sit." Clara obeyed, though every instinct screamed at her to resist. Eleanor took a seat opposite, folding her hands in her lap. "You've made quite a mess of things," Eleanor began. "This affair with Samuel, it's not just improper, it's dangerous. For both of you. And yet, you continue to defy me." Clara lifted her chin. "I cannot stop loving him. You may control my life, Mother, but you cannot control my heart." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Your heart is reckless, foolish, and I will not allow it to ruin this household. Do you understand me?" "Yes," Clara said, though her heart pounded with defiance. Eleanor leaned forward slightly. "Good. Then understand this. If you cannot obey me, if you cannot put aside your foolish desires, then the consequences will be severe. Do not test my patience." Clara's hands trembled slightly in her lap. "And if I do? If I cannot obey?" Eleanor's smile was thin, predatory. "Then you will see what disobedience truly costs." Clara rose, her stomach twisting with a mixture of fear and determination. "I will not betray him. no matter what you threaten. Eleanor's expression darkened. So be it. Watch yourself, Clara. Every step you take, every glance you give him, I will know. And when the time comes, you will answer for it. Clara left the room, her head held high despite the fear curling in her chest. The hallways seemed longer, shadows deeper, as though the mansion itself had become a labyrinth of suspicion. Back in the servants' quarters, Samuel waited anxiously. When Clara returned, he immediately took her hands in his. Is she angry? Clara met his gaze, determination flaring. Angry, yes, but I will not stop. Whatever she threatens, whatever she plans, I will find a way to be with you. Samuel's eyes shone with both relief and worry. Then we need a plan. Carefully, carefully. She is watching, and one wrong move. I know, Clara whispered. But we have each other. And sometimes, that's enough to face even the darkest of days. The two of them sat together in the dim light of the quarters, speaking in hushed tones, plotting every secret path, every hidden meeting. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, carrying Eleanor's shadow across the estate, a constant reminder that love in the world of Rosewood came at a perilous cost. The plantation seemed peaceful, its workers humming in the fields, unaware of the storm brewing in the hearts of their mistress, her daughter, and the slave they both dared to care for. But the calm was fragile. With each passing day, the tension mounted, a powder keg ready to ignite. And in the silence, Clara and Samuel knew one truth above all. In this house of whispers, only the clever and the daring could survive. The storm had been building all day, not just in the heavy clouds gathering above Rosewood, but within the house itself. Servants whispered, glances darted between hallways, and even the wind seemed to carry tension. Clara could feel it in her bones. Something was about to happen, something irreversible. By nightfall, thunder rolled over the horizon, shaking the shutters of the grand mansion. The household had settled early, uneasy and restless, but Clara was not in her bed. She moved quietly through the corridor, candle in hand, the flame trembling as though it, too, feared discovery. She slipped through the back door and into the storm. The rain was a curtain of silver, blurring the path as she made her way to the old storage barn, their meeting place when the world was too dangerous to face. Samuel was already there, his shirt soaked through, his shoulders glistening under the flickering lantern. He turned when he heard her approach. Relief softened his features. "You came," he said, stepping closer. "I had to," Clara replied. "She's planning something. I can feel it." Samuel frowned. "What did she say?" "She didn't have to say it," Clara whispered. "The way she looks at me, at you, like she's already decided what to do." Samuel took her hand. "Then we need to leave. Tonight." Clara froze. "Leave? Where could we go?" "North," Samuel said, his voice firm, desperate. "There's talk of safe routes. I know men who've gone. We could find passage." Clara shook her head. "And what then? We'd be hunted. My mother would send men after us." "You know she would." Samuel's grip tightened. Better to run and face the world than to stay and die slowly under her roof. The thunder cracked again, closer this time. The barn shuddered. Clara looked into his eyes, torn between fear and longing. "I'll go," she whispered finally, "but only if we can make it past the guards unseen." He nodded, but before either could speak again, the sound of a voice cut through the storm. "Clara." They turned. Eleanor stood in the doorway, rain streaming from her cloak, her eyes blazing with fury. Behind her stood two field hands, both carrying lanterns. Samuel instinctively stepped in front of Clara, shielding her. "You shouldn't be here, ma'am," he said carefully. Eleanor's lips curved into a cold smile. "On the contrary, Samuel, this is exactly where I should be." She stepped closer, her gaze flicking between them. "So it's true then, my daughter and my servant." Clara swallowed hard. "Mother." "Silence," Eleanor snapped. "Do you have any idea what disgrace this brings upon our name? What ruin this invites?" Clara lifted her chin. "Love is not disgrace. Eleanor's hand shot out and struck her across the face. The sound was sharp, cutting through the thunder. "You call this love?" she hissed. "You've been deceived, used. He doesn't care for you, he cares for your weakness." Samuel's eyes flashed. "That's a lie," he said, his voice low but steady. "I never wanted her wealth, or your pity. I wanted her freedom. I wanted her." Eleanor turned to him, fury trembling in her hands. "And now, you'll pay for it." She gestured to the men behind her. "Take him." The two moved forward, but Samuel was faster. He lunged, knocking one aside and striking the lantern from his hand. It shattered, flames licking at the straw-covered floor. Eleanor screamed as the fire spread quickly, feeding on the dry air and oil. "Samuel!" Clara cried, grabbing his arm. He pulled her toward the back of the barn. Smoke filled their lungs, heat clawing at their skin. They stumbled into the rain, gasping for air as behind them, the barn erupted into an inferno. From the doorway, Eleanor emerged, coughing and wild-eyed, her cloak ablaze. One of the men dragged her to safety, slapping out the fire. Her gaze locked on Clara and Samuel through the rain, not with fear, but with a dark, venomous promise. "This isn't over," she spat. "You think you can run? You'll never escape me." Samuel's chest heaved, his heart pounding against his ribs. He turned to Clara. "We have to go now." But Clara hesitated, looking back at the burning barn, the men shouting, the chaos unfurling like a nightmare. "She'll come after us. Then we'll be ready," Samuel said. "Whatever it takes." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the shadows beyond the fields. Their figures disappeared into the storm, two souls fleeing the ruins of their own making. Behind them, the flames consumed the old barn, casting a furious glow against the sky. Eleanor stood watching, the rain washing soot from her face, her eyes cold and calculating. By dawn, Rosewood was a hushed ruin of smoke and rumor. The mistress's daughter and the slave were gone. Some said they drowned in the river that night. Others whispered that they made it north, to freedom. But Eleanor knew better. She felt it in her bones their story was not over. For love that defied the laws of the land was never allowed to end quietly. It burned, it haunted, and in the ashes of that night, it began to twist into something darker.